long time coming. I'm really grateful you're able to stop in today and make time for it. I've been wanting to have this conversation and following what you've been doing for a while now, as like a fan of you at 5 Cent City at the events, listening to the way you speak, hearing bits and pieces of your story from other people and from what I've researched. So I'm looking forward to this conversation a lot, and I'm grateful you're able to be here. Thanks,
awesome,
bro.
man. I'm glad to be here. It's great. Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah, and the poem at 5 Cent City was great. I didn't think I'd be able to pull that off. But I did, right? I remember Christian reaching out to me, or no, I reached out to him and I was like, yeah, let's do it this year at 5 Cent City. I spoke there a few years back. I think it was the first year they had it.
Yeah.
And I think I read my story off a piece of paper and got it there as quick as I could, right? I was so nervous and I was just like reading it.
Yeah.
And I remember this year when I reached out to him, he's like, man, I'd love to have you. And this will be great. And he's like, but one thing is, it's like the year of the poem. And he's like, you have to write a poem. Like, oh man, no way, I'm not doing that, right?
Yeah,
Scratch that.
speech is hard enough.
But he's like, try it out. You know, you got like, I think I had like a month and a half, 2 months to prep. And I just started writing and like creating this poem. And it was really long at first. And I just kept like dialing it down more and more. And I met with Christian. I read him off a bit of it and just kept dialing it in. And I'm like, I really want to memorize this thing and just like go hard when I go there, right? And I just kept rehearsing and like rehearsing like friend, family, that kind of stuff, and just like went off. And when I went there, it just took off. Like,
dude, it killed. Really, like it hit hard.
Yeah.
Like everybody, I think it was probably the best, most well delivered one, I would say. And I liked a lot of them, and a lot of them were very good.
Yeah.
But to have it memorized, to be as long and as clear with your words, and articulate was was impressive.
It was really long. But I was like, I just memorized it, and I knew my next phrase. Like I knew that last word meant this next word, and I could go off from that. So, I just delivered it, and it was great. Like I can honestly say, I'm like for that piece, I'm really proud of myself that I came through.
Amazing.
Yeah. So now, like ever since then, like I just like once a week in my car, I'll just go off and just like do it.
No
and
way.
I can still remember it all, and I still have it in my head. Yeah. So recently, actually, so I'm part of Toastmasters.
Mm-hmm.
So,
sick.
So one day they're like, "Oh, we have no speakers, we have nothing," and there was like 20 people there. There was a few people from other Toastmasters groups, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll do my poem. And she's like, "Oh my God, please do it."
Amazing.
So I just did it. I went off, and it was just like, you know, the more you do something, the better you can deliver and like hit
100%.
those different notes and different things, right? Like with proper emotion and. Yeah, it was great. It was great. I love delivering it, and it's been good. You know?
Nice.
So I want to keep it in my back pocket always.
Oh, of course.
I never put it out anywhere, like the video, because I have a video of it. I think Easy Rick did a video, and it was great. And I'm like, but I like no, I don't want to put it out. I want to keep it like, you know, do it in person, right? I think it delivers so much better.
I can appreciate that. Yeah.
Unless I can do like a really good video with a videographer and like snap back in and out or do something like almost like a music video kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, just sick. The poem, it would be really sick. Yeah. So it's in the back pocket. Damn. A lot of people haven't, you know, heard it or anything, right? Like they'll hear about it or whatever. I'll be like, I did this poem, but no, I didn't put it out anywhere.
I almost wonder if it'd be better, or not better, but maybe how it would go over being like a raw, authentic, just camera phone video on Ricky's phone. I almost wonder if that would like add a bit of the ambiance.
But I'd like to redo it because it was there, and like I think I missed a part or two. I was really nervous, whatever. Whereas now I can spit it out so much better.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It'd be cool to have like a compare and contrast one, right? Like a brand new to or an old to new one, where you're like, this is what it was and this is what it is.
Yeah.
So at least all the time, like once you've got that one dialed in, right? Like this nice video, but that'd be cool. Yeah. Can you, for people who may not know or haven't listened or heard of you on other stuff, did you want to kind of take us through there's been a lot, and I like through your life that you've been through, but I want to kind of dive into, I like starting the episode like leaving like the life after high school, like your portion there, but it seems to me like your story doesn't really, like you don't really have like a graduation grade 12 typical thing, right?
No, I was in like youth custody facilities, right, during that period of my life, right, like high school, so life after high school.
We can start though, I'd like to, because I think it'll help for context, and we have the time. Start us in that kind of like 14, 15, 16-year-old like age, we kind of start our story there, unless there's, and you can add in whatever's important that might have been earlier.
Yeah, I think even a bit earlier, like I think 13, I started getting into like the really wrong crowd, right? And I found it to be safe for me. Like, so I moved here, like, you know, grade 4 kind of thing, and I was getting bullied a lot in school, and I got to the point where I was like, oh my god, like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't even want to go to school, that kind of thing. And I was the new kid, right? So I got to a point where I remember like these guys were bullying me, and then these bad kids from the project nearby or whatever kind of had my back. They're like, leave the guy alone, whatever. So I start hanging out with them, and I'm like, wow, I can be, you know, here I'm safe, right? This works, right? Because I tried the whole, you know, go to my dad, oh, I'm getting beat up or whatever, and he's like, you know, you got to fight back. And then I'm like, okay, so I do that, and then it's like, oh, keep your hands to yourself, right? Like, you get sent home and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, you can't win. Right. No. So, so I kind of got in with the wrong crowd, and it kind of kept me safe, right? And then it just excelled in that way, right? It just became my friend group, and then along the way, when I was about grade 7, I had failed grade 3, and then I failed my second year, grade 7.
How do you? Sorry, it kind of sounds like almost funny in a way when you hear like, yeah, I failed grade 3. It almost seems like dismissive of it, but I'm wondering, how do you do that?
Well, yeah, because these days they just push kids through, right?
Oh, buddy, you can get a GED just for barely showing up.
Yeah. So grade 3, I was living in Quebec at the time, and I remember that was the year like they do the testing and all that kind of stuff or whatever. But I remember putting my feet up on the desk and be like, I don't know why we're doing this shit, so why are we doing it, right? Kind of thing. And I went home. I had a report card of like all Fs except for gym class, right?
Nice course.
So.
Yes, sir.
So you know that kind of put me behind, and then. I failed grade 7 somehow. I don't know. Like I was in some Catholic school or something. So then my parents switched me to public school. It was like the average was like 50 instead of 60 or something like that. So, but that summer, I got into a lot of trouble that summer. I kind of, stealing a lot of stuff, doing a lot of bad things. My mom was really sick, and she passed away that year that I was at Churchill. And went to school 28 days that year. And I remember, like, even like truancy officers, you know, calling my house, all this kind of stuff. My dad trying to bring me to school. I had police officers driving me to school. I'm like, you're just helping my reputation, right? Like, you know, have police officers drive you to school. How cool are you, right? Yeah. So, and then, you know, just dip out the back, right? And then my dad would be parked in the parking lot behind, you know, the school, knowing that that's where I'm going to end up. Right? So it was always that kind of stuff. Wow. And then I ended up, you know, when my mom passed away, I was like, man, like I didn't care about life either. Right?
You said grade 6, 7?
Grade 7.
7.
Yeah.
When'd you get that?
So second year, grade 7. So probably, you know, I was 13. She passed away December, I think. So I was 13. You know, gonna be 14 in March. That kind of thing. Jeez. Right. So yeah, it hit home for me a lot, and I was like, you know what, I don't want to live either. Like I just want to die and be with her. Right. Like I didn't know how to live without it, right? So, so I kind of just got worse and worse at school, right? Like, the school system actually ended up transferring me from grade 7 to grade 9, because like, hey, you know, you're gonna be, let's just put you with your age group, right? So and no junior highs wanted to accept me, right? I was really bad. I was in juvie, that kind of stuff. So like, put them at LaSalle, right? So they put me at LaSalle. I'm now in grade 9. Last grade I completed was grade 6.
Oh,
right?
geez.
So math and all this kind of stuff, I'm like, no way.
Yeah.
Right? And the teachers like asking me about homework and all this stuff, like, oh, what are you, stupid? And I'm like, oh my god, like people are looking at me, all these pretty girls in the class. I'm like, you know, I can look stupid right now. I look like a badass, right?
Yeah.
So throw a chair, freak out in the hall, you know, I'm out, right? Kind of thing. So I would keep registering to high school every year, and like just go hang out for a bit, right? But after, you know, they're like, you attended 30 out of 60 days this year, so you're gone, right? So I'm like, okay, you know, whatever. Back to juvie, back to all that kind of stuff. My dad was working out of town. I had the house to myself sometimes. You know, we were stealing cars. We were doing all this kind of stuff. Like, I was all in, right? I was all in. And then you get to a point where I kind of put this mask on, right? I was like, hey, being a badass kind of, you know, saves me from getting bullied. It keeps me from, like, I don't know, keeps the pain away, right? Do drugs, you know, addictions, all that kind of stuff. Just, keeps the heart cold and just keeps you going in that direction, right? And the more you're like living that street life, and you know you're with these people, right? You can get bullied in that sense too, right? Like I just became this follower that just did what other people did, but also, and in order to stay safe, you have to like grow and be worse and worse, right? Kind of thing. Like that's how you get respect on the street, right? Every time you get out of jail, it's, you know what I mean, you're the cool cat in town, right? So you try and climb this ladder that you think is going to get you somewhere, but it's just going to get you, you know, for me, like the further I climbed this ladder, the further I was from what I truly valued, right? Like I didn't plan on living past 20, so I didn't care about the consequences of anything, right? I tried to burn every bridge so people wouldn't miss me when I'm gone, right? I didn't want to live, right? So I was like, but like the whole, I had like suicide tendencies, like I didn't want to live, but I didn't want to commit suicide and like hurt my dad and my family and all these people.
Because you knew what it had done, and you'd seen what it done to
like
you, and
the pain to other people. But I was like, I remember driving with my dad in the truck, and he had picked me up from jail or something one day. Like I was young, like maybe 15, 16.
Jeez.
And I was like, I don't want to fucking be here, man. Like I don't want to live this life. And I opened the door to the truck, and he grabbed me and he's like, you do want to be here. You chose this life. Right. And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. Right. And it took me like till I was an adult to understand that kind of stuff. Like we're, you know, a soul, and you know, we're more than, you know, just our life here. Right. Yeah, but the whole I don't know, like the whole suicidal ideation thing was just like, you know, if I live careless and ruthless as much as possible, I'll die by the lifestyle, and then so be it, right? It wasn't my fault. I didn't take my own life, you know, life took me kind of thing, right? So you know, I just died by result, right? So
that was kind of the hope at that point.
I'm living my life just super cold, not caring about anyone, just, you know, just not wanting to live. So I'm just, you know, riding it out and just being horrible, right? And not caring about people's feelings. But then when I got older, I had 2 kids by the time I was 19 with 2 different girls.
Jeez,
Right? And then I was like, oh man, I can't, you know, part of me was like, oh man, now I got to be responsible and stuff. And then I was like, you know, it's kind of that thing, like, and I piece it together now. It's like, I didn't want to grow up. I didn't want to take responsibility. I didn't want to, you know, you don't want me as a father. You don't want me around your kids. Like I'm bad news, right? Like I've been, you know, living on these streets doing this kind of stuff for like years now, right? So I don't know any different. I don't know how to be a father or a good man or, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? I only know bad, right?
Yeah, no kidding. Before we keep pushing forward, I want to circle back to something, because there are 2 things I think in this timeline that you've already talked about that I want to really like understand. What was the like most, when you say in and out of juvie doing this, that, what was the most reckless and like dangerous thing that like really pushed the line, that if you had to share this with somebody and tell them, that it'd be like, oh man, like the most eye-opening, like, ooh, I pushed it that far? Like what was the furthest you like pushed it, you think?
I think
that you can share, of course.
Like crime-wise, or like just like, I don't know.
Reckless,
like,
or dangerous, or criminal.
I feel like when I was a kid, like about 14, maybe 15, even 13, I guess, because I remember my mom being around for part of it, was doing solvents. Jeez. Which is like horrible, right? Like you think about it now, and I hear about people like, you know, whipping cans or whatever kind of thing. I'm like, oh my god, no, like that's horrible. Like you get brain damage, all this kind of stuff. But when I was a kid, you didn't know, right? You didn't know, like just all these other kids are doing it. They're, you know, you're putting white out in a plastic bag and huffing it and all this kind of stuff, and you're hallucinating, like you're not there. Right? Like it just hits your brain, right? And it's really bad for you. And I did that for a while, and I, you know, was huffing white out, huffing gas, all this kind of stuff. And it was like, it's even really embarrassing for me to admit and say, but I was just this kid, this follower, right? That was, you know, doing these things. And it's like, to any of these kids, right? Like right now listening or anything, it's like what you do in your, you know, in your youth will really affect your, you know, health or mental health, like in the future, right? Like I probably caused brain damage, right? It probably didn't help me, you know, through school to do all these kind of things, right? And even I remember my mom catching me in my basement. She's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then she grabbed this thing out of my pants, and she's like, oh my god, you're huffing fucking paint or whiteout, and she smells it. My brother came out of his room and he's like, oh, you can get like there's built foam on your brain and all this kind of stuff, and kids are dying. And I'm like, what the hell, right? So that really, scared the shit out of me. Jeez. Yeah.
In a couple shows you've done that I've listened to, you talk about, and it could have been having to become like forced to become a father, or it could have been something else. I'm curious. I don't know if it was like you were 20 or it was in 2002, like what it was. But what was your like wake up call moment that you had that forced the transition out, where you're like, okay, I should probably start looking to grow up, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, well, I think I had to be about 21, 22, and I had a lot of charges pending, and I had a lot going on the street as far as like climbing this ladder, right? I felt like I was at the pinnacle, like, yeah, I'm here, I'm rolling with the big boys. I'm solid, people, you know what I mean? Like I'm up here now finally, right? And then I'm looking down off this ladder and be like, what am I leaving behind, right? Like people like, are you ready to go all in? Because this is it, right? There's no turning back now, right? And I'm like, fuck, I don't know, man. Like, this is crazy, right? I started waking up and being like, do I want to do this with the, like, so quick story.
Yeah, please.
My first time in adult jail, I think I was 19 because I didn't get arrested my whole, like, 18 to 19. But then when I was 19, I got arrested, and I went to the adult jail.
Oh,
right?
no.
Like, I was like, oh, shit.
Bit different?
I'm here now. Yeah, real different. You don't get cake on your birthday here, right? So I remember they asked me before going upstairs into the ranges, they asked me to, like, do you have any affiliation with Satan's Choice, right?
Sure.
Which is the biker gang back in the day, right before Hell's Angels came through, and I was like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. So they bring me upstairs, and I'm on this range with like all these big dudes, and I'm like, oh my god. And they're all kind of like shaking their heads, like, you're on the bug range, and I'm like,
what's a range? Is that just like
floor? Range is like, it's almost like a big cage in the jail, and then it's like like there's about 10 of them, right? So it's like a big cage in the jail, and then there's like desks and chairs.
Okay,
all
I can
down
visualize
in there
it now. Yeah,
with all the cells are in there, but you're caged inside the jail, right? So, so I hop in here, and they lock the door behind me. And these guys were just fucking with me, right? And they all start laughing. They're like, pick a bunk, all this kind of stuff. But I met this guy there, and I was in his bunk for a while and all this kind of stuff. And I later, found out, like, how much of, like, a heavy he was, right? Like, he was looking at life in prison and all this kind of stuff, right? Like, he was big time. And so I hung out with him a lot. Like, he kind of took me under his wing, right? He's like, you're going to work out with us, you're rolling with us, all this kind of stuff.
Right on.
And he kind of took care of me in there and put me under his wing. So I always hung out with him. And the one thing I learned from him was, I remember I was freaking out or something at a guard, and he's like, you don't want to do that, man. You don't want to end up in the hole, this kind of stuff. And he's like, he's like, I'm looking at life in prison right now. And he's like, the girl that I love is on the outside, and I'll never see her again, right? And he's like, it's go big or go home. He's like, I went big. I did everything for my boys. I did everything for, to climb this ladder. Right? Yeah. And look where I am. I'm doing life in prison.
So I'm at the top of it. This is where it is.
Exactly. So he actually committed suicide in that jail, right?
Whoa.
I remember one night they were just like, they just yelled some stuff, and the guards ran by freaking out.
You were there,
yeah,
too?
I was there. I was in the cell next to him.
Bro.
I was in the cell next to him, right? And they're like, oh, and they're like, they're cutting him down and stuff. And yeah, he committed suicide in that jail. Yeah, so when it came time to my, like, it was my go big or go home moment, right? Everyone's like, yeah, man, you're here, you got this, we got your back, all this kind of stuff. But, it's all or nothing now, right? Like, you're with us now and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, it kind of gave me that wake up call. I was like, shit, this is go big or go home moment. Yeah. Right? And like, I don't want to go big because I know exactly where I'm going to
you saw it
end up.
next
right?
door.
Like, it didn't wake me up then when I was 19. When I got out, I was like, yeah, I just went and did the whole same old. But then when it came time to my go big or go home moment, I was like, no way. no way. But then I turn around and I look and I'm like, I don't have a home to go to, right? I burned every bridge, right? Anyone who trusted me or anything, or, you know, that I could turn to now didn't trust me anymore. Right. It was the same old, like, yeah, I want to change my life, all this and that. Well, we heard this before. Right. So I had to actually do it. Right. I actually had to turn my life around. I remember one of my friends, he just had like this bad phone call or bad interaction with his girlfriend or something like that. And he gets in the car and I'm in the passenger seat. And he's just flying through like every stop sign, every red light. Like he's just not even like just gas to the pedal, like just flying. And I'm holding on to the fucking shit.
You're like, oh, this is it.
And I'm like, oh my God, like I'm gonna die. And I'm like, bro, stop. I have kids. And it's the first time that I was like, I cared to live or die, right? Because before I was, you know, ruthless and all that kind of stuff. So that's a weakness, right? Like you're known as ruthless when you don't care if you live or die. You're dangerous, right? Because you don't give a shit. But now that's a weakness, right? Like being like, oh, I'm scared to die. I'm scared to get into these fights. I'm scared to get stabbed. You know, all this kind of stuff. Now that's weakness, right? So I now realize that I was like, I wanted to live for the first time, right? I'm like, now I want to live. I want to do this. And it's like, wow, does that, like, so I'd wake up and like, I try and piece it together every morning because you wake up, you're sober. Right. So I'd wake up and I'm like,
this is weird.
What am I doing with my life though? Right. Like, wow, I've been sitting here doing this for 10 years and every day is the same. Like, I can't tell you the difference between, 2000 and 1998. Like, I did the same shit every day. Right. So I was like, wow, to turn my life around, was that, like, how am I going to do that? Right. Like, I have no education. I have no, job history, nothing like that, no resume. I have a criminal record the length of my arm. Like, who's going to trust me? Who's going to hire me? How am I ever going to get through it? Right? So I don't know. But I had to slowly, okay, well, I had to decide that, I have to do it, right? It's either that or I'm good as dead, right? So I had to jump out, right? Be like, I'm out, right? Like, pay the guy what I owed him and just be done, right? So
is that what it was? It was like pay X amount and then...
Well, no, it's like, when you sell drugs or do whatever, right? You always kind of owe.
You owe, right? So you squared up with whoever you needed to.
Yeah, I squared up and I'm like, I'm done, dude. He's like, you sure? You're doing great. Right? You're doing great. I'm like, yeah, that's great.
That's what I need.
Yeah, but I'm going to end up dead or in jail, like half you guys, right? Yeah. And I can look at it now, right? Like, so many people I know, like, died or, in jail or all that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, that's not for me. It can't be me, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't give my 2 kids the same reason why I started the shit, right? Like, because then I was like, it's different now. Like, there's more people in the picture. It's not just me that I'm not just throwing my life away. I'm throwing away their life too. I'm giving them childhood trauma. I'm giving them, like, no father, right?
Yeah.
So how are they going to end up, right? So the only way I could guarantee them a good father and a good role model in their life is to become that person.
Oh, shit.
And I'm like, wow, I got to fix 10 years of my life. All the bridges I burnt, right? Instead of dying, now I got to live.
Start rebuilding.
I don't want to do this shit, right? So I'd go back and forth like, nah, fuck this. I don't want to be that man.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, I don't have a choice, man. You got to live. You got to do it. Jeez. Right? So I just start at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did that first kind of initial step, like the step process look like for you at the time? Like, once you'd made that conscious decision?
I moved out of my friend's house, and because we were like living in this just party house, right? Like, every time it was bar night or whatever, we were throwing a house party, right? So I'm like, hey, I gotta get out of here, right? And so I got my own place, like a little rooming house, student, whatever kind of stuff, and just started like applying for jobs, like little shit jobs, labor jobs, that kind of stuff, right? And just worked my way at the bottom, and it was hard because like here I am like working at, like, I got a job at Tim Hortons, right? I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. Like, I was, like, my reputation just went, right?
Right.
But I had to really, like, it was a mental game. Like, I had to stop giving a shit what people thought of me, right? Like,
tough.
I no longer care about your respect. I need respect from, like, my kids, my dad, like, the people that are there for me thick and thin.
And from yourself.
Yeah, and for myself, right? Like, it was a hard time, like, looking myself in the mirror and be like, wow, like, are you worth fighting for? Right? And it's like, you need to create this man, right?
Jeez.
Because you can't raise these kids and just be an asshole, right?
No, for
They're not
sure.
going to respect you, and you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to be able to be that man for them, right? So here I'm working at Tim Hortons, and they're like, oh, you'll be a baker in the back, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. I'll be in the back. I'm hidden, like
nobody
knows
can
that I'm
see
here.
me. Yeah.
And then one night the girl's like, oh, we need help in the front. You know, it's super busy. And I'm like, oh my god, like I'm wearing Tim Hortons visor or whatever.
What if so?
It was back in the day. It was like 2000 or whatever. But yeah. And then sure enough, like some guys walk in with a bunch of girls and all this kind of stuff, and they're like, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Fuck off, man! Like, just, like, oh, no. That's great. You're working and all this kind of stuff." I'm like, "Oh my god, no way!" And then I quit, right? Because I'm in the back, I'm freaking out. I'm like, "Oh man, I can't do this," right? But then I had to just go apply again, more jobs, and just be known as like, you know, some guys call me a sellout, like, "Oh, you're a sellout, you're a sellout." I'm like, if being like a father and a good man is being a sellout, like, then call me whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't care about the respect you have for me anymore. I gotta lose it, right? I have to be forgotten. Right?
Jeez. Oh man. That's that sounds like a lot to have gone through at that, especially at that time, going through different jobs and going through all these different experiences. Did you, in the process of, like you said, like working the shit jobs, right? Did you meet anybody that stood out from those like jobs, whether it be like just somebody you worked with? Because it sounded like in jail, when you were telling me when you first went to adult jail, there was this gentleman, right, that had this kind of an impact. Was there anybody in that
I think
time span? Or
I was working in Toronto with my dad, like, so he would take me working with him, like we do construction, we do metal stuff framing in condos. So I go work with him in Toronto, and I remember these guys I ran into, and they're working too. But like the guy had a nice car. I'm like, how you doing this with this salary? Because we're getting paid like peanuts here, right? And he's like, well, I'm going to school too, right? He's like, you don't want to do this forever. What are you doing, right? And I'm like, oh, dude, I can't. You know, I can't go to school. I have grade 6 education. I have a criminal record, all this kind of stuff. He's like, that doesn't matter. Get OSAP. You know, do this and that. So he kind of explained all that to me, right? He's like, get your GED, do something. Like, don't do this forever. You're gonna be broke forever, right? Or whatever. And I seen my dad fight through, like construction. It just wasn't something that I wanted to do forever, right? Like the whole construction thing, and
like just being the labor guy.
Yeah, or even like following my dad's footsteps. Sure, like we could have a father and son business right now, which would be great. Like construction, he was a carpenter his whole life, right? Like he was a great example for me, and he could, I could have easily followed his footsteps. But then that means I just got success by following my dad's footsteps and doing, kind of like
for yourself.
On his exactly. I'm like, I got to be me and do what I want, right? And like show that I can, go to school, get an education, get what I want, right? That kind of stuff. So I think that was the moment where I was like, maybe I got to get an education, that kind of stuff, or it kind of like planted that seed for that, right? And I eventually started writing the GED, that kind of stuff. And then when I called the university, they're like, you can apply as a mature student. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, well, you try out for a year, and if you can tough it out, then let's go, right? So I applied to Laurentian, and I got in, and I go to OSAP and all that kind of stuff, and I got there, and I was like, I didn't even know how to write an essay. Like, I'm talking grade 6 education, right? How are you going to university? Right? They're like, oh, go to college, go this, go that. I'm like, no, but originally I was like, okay, I'll go to university. Maybe I'll become a teacher or something, help kids who are like me, right? Stay in school and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like trying to take like history, geography, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, how am I going to do it? My second year geography was like quantum physics, right? So I was like, okay, no, scratch that. So now I'm back in history. I'm like, at least I can remember dates and names, right? And I had all the academic advisors and counselors and all that kind of stuff there. They're like, you're failing. Like, you have an unattainable goal, right? And that word, like those words right there was like, screw you, right? Like, I'm going to do this now, like in spite of like, you think I can't do it. They're like, go for plan B, go to college, do something. Like, what else do you want to do? I'm like, no, this is plan A, and this is what I'm doing, right? Even though I didn't end up becoming a teacher and going to teacher's college, I'm like, I'm getting this average, and I'm graduating with this.
Hell yeah.
And a couple years later, I graduated with a bachelor's degree.
So when you figured out that you couldn't really do teacher's college, or that wasn't really in the cards at the time.
Yeah, I was dreading it. I was dreading teacher's college, so I'm like, maybe, there's something else for me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't pass I was trying to get into French teacher's college because I'm like, oh, I'm French. I live in Quebec, whatever.
French.
I went to English school in Quebec, so I didn't have the, like, conjugating verbs and all this shit.
No,
right? So, So I couldn't pass this French test to save the life of me. I tried to take French as second language courses, everything. I kept on getting like 35 on this test, like 3-4 times. I'm like, hey, there's something in the cards. It's not working out.
And you need a 50.
Yeah. So I'm like, hey, there's got to be something else, right? And I had a counselor tell me, they're like, there's got to be a way around this wall that is here.
I appreciate counselors like that, man.
Yeah.
Good. There's like the one person saying
like,
the opposite of everybody.
What do you want to do? Like, what's the ultimate outcome? Like, I want to work with kids like me, right? I want to give them hope that they can get through it too, right? So, so the more I thought about it, the more I was like, the kids I'm trying to reach aren't in high school, right? So.
Oh God, no.
So then I took like community and justice at Cambridge. Right, so I did that. I actually cranked out the course in like 8 months because I'm like, I'm not doing another 2 years of school. It took me 6 years to get a bachelor's degree, right? So I'm like, I'm not doing another 2 years now in Cambridge and all this kind of stuff. Student loans.
So you have your bachelor's in education?
No, I have my bachelor's in I have a bachelor's in history.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, so a bachelor's in history, and then I have a diploma in community justice.
Jeez.
Yeah. No high school whatsoever, not one credit.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Maybe a credit or half a credit from like jail or something, right? Like you try and go to school through there, or youth jail or something, but...
Youth jail has that though, not adult jail.
Yeah. Monteith had that.
Oh yeah?
Adult jail, yeah, they have school.
Okay. Where was this? Is this a suburb or no?
Monteith is out in Timmins.
Right.
Yeah. Still a provincial jail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn. But they had that, eh?
Yeah.
Right on.
So I did an art class. I think I got half a credit or
Sick.
something. Something to do. Right?
Some random, time filler.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So, and I think too, hats off to you, because I think it seems to me like the systems design, like the people that can make the most impact are the ones that aren't allowed to go through it. Like, oh, if you have the criminal record and you have all this, well, you're probably the best person to make this change for those kids.
I think that's why I went that route specifically. I'm like, you know what? Because I kept trying to get my pardon, right? So the whole pardon thing is a whole other ball game. Like, a pardon, like, I don't know how it is now, but back then it was like, I think it was like 5 years if you had like provincial crimes, and like if you had like federal crimes, it was 10 years or something like that. Anyways, I knew I had to wait 5 years to get my pardon, right? So my last conviction was like 02 or something, was like my last court date.
Sorry, a quick question. I want to jump in there. What does that mean, like, pardon? Like, what do you have to do to get it? Like, that excuses the record, or is that...
Yeah, well, the RCMP and, like, all the big boys still have it.
Of course.
Right? But, like, when you go do a CPIC, to get a job or
like
something,
a basic criminal record
want a criminal record check, vulnerable sector check. Like, so your criminal record won't show up in there.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So, but, like, RCMP, all that kind of stuff, they still have it. Like, you're still a criminal. And I'm pretty sure, like... The states and stuff, that's a whole different ballgame. Like,
different thing.
Like, you're not pardoning there, it's just a Canadian pardon.
Oh, okay, right? Interesting.
But I'm like, wow, I need this to do, like, anything, government-wise. Like, if I want a better job, if I want to work probation and parole or youth probation. I thought about youth probation because I'm like, okay, maybe I can go that route.
Right.
But even then, like, when I was about to go to teacher's college, and I'm like, hey, I got to get this pardon. It's been like 10 years, right, since my last conviction. I'm good to go. Like, a long time ago, I could have applied for it. So I called them, I put in the application. I put in everything, all the pictures of me graduating, all this kind of stuff, like my whole life. I wrote an essay, like I sent it off. And they come back to me with some highlighted stuff. They're like, you have restitution owing from your last charges, right? I did some bank fraud or something like that. I owed $4,000.
Restitution.
Yeah, so restitution is like, you got to pay back the money or whatever. They make you pay money instead of like a sentence, like as part of your sentence sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Right? So like if you damage some stuff or whatever, they'll make you pay an amount. Like it's kind of like a fine, right?
Right.
So, but they passed a new bill, so restitution counts as sentencing, but it's also, so he was kind of beating around the bush, right? I'm calling this guy, and I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you didn't pay your restitution. I'm like, okay, well, here it is. Here's the $4,000, right? I, made some things happen,
yeah,
right?
Been working.
Like, here's the $4,000. Like what now, right? And he's like, well, no, sir. Unfortunately, he's beating around the bush. I'm like, spit it out, buddy. He's like, restitution now counts as sentencing, and your 5 years starts from the end of your sentencing. So he's like, unfortunately, sir, your 5 years starts now.
So as soon as you paid it, that's when it. Come on!
Yeah, and I'm like, I lost
that's a gut
it.
punch
like,
for sure.
Oh, my whole shit. I was just like, I can't.
We were rolling. So much momentum.
Yeah, I'm like, I could have applied for this thing like 5 years ago, right? Like, what the hell, right? If I would have known,
but you didn't,
right?
yeah.
But I didn't know. So now I'm sitting 10 years past the last time I committed a crime, and now I have to wait another 5 years to get my pardon. You know, what does this mean?
Yeah, it was
right?
15 years since last.
Yeah, so now I'm like, holy shit, I gotta wait 5 years from now to get my pardon, right? To get any good job or whatever. Right, and I remember going to like career counselors and stuff, and you know the people that help you get jobs and stuff at certain, you know, places that help you write your resume, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I have a criminal record, but I have, you know, I have a degree. Right, this has to help. Yeah. Right, and he's like, unfortunately, Jim, unless you get your pardon, like you're very limited. Right, like so I was stuck in like labor jobs, all that kind of stuff, and I'm sitting here with a degree. Right, but because I have a criminal record. Right, so that's when I was like, you know, maybe I'll beat them at their old game, right? Like, because like in community justice and corrections, all that kind of stuff, like anything like social work related, we always tell people like, you know, just turn your life around. You can get good jobs and all this kind of stuff or whatever. So how can you turn me down because I have a criminal record? Meanwhile, I just changed my life for the last 10, 15 years.
Your own narrative is conflicting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's what I did. I went into that field and I was like, you know what, I gotta, you know, this is the right place to be. Right, because now I can help people just like me, and I can tell them my story, and I can, you know, help change. Right.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's weird to me that it's almost designed for you to fail, but there are weird loopholes, and I feel a lot of people are very dismissive of the struggle people or the delinquents or the criminals or whatnot, right?
Well, you get labeled, right?
Yeah.
You get labeled, and for me, I was like, I need to draw the line in the sand as far as possible from the person that I used to be. Right? Like I, you know, you label yourself as well, right? Like you know, you walk around. I'm like, I gotta change my clothes. Like, you should see my outfit trying to go to university, right? Like, I'm wearing a freaking, you know, sweater vest and a messenger bag and glasses just to like try and fit in, right? I'm like, I shouldn't be here, right? I felt like I didn't deserve to be there, and I didn't fit in. So I'm like trying to fit in and be this different person instead of being myself, right?
Tough.
So it took me a long time to just be okay with like, no, I'm smart too. I deserve to be here. All this kind of stuff, right?
Brutal.
But yeah, even trying to get jobs, like when I had, like I have a degree, I have a diploma, like I have all the education I need to get like these good jobs. But they're all like, no, you can't work here and there and all this kind of stuff. So I remember when I got my diploma, I was like, okay, I'm hitting this job field. Like, how am I going to do this, right? And my program supervisor, she was like, you know, Project Dare is hiring. And I'm like, I'm not going to Project Dare. Like, so Project Dare is a youth custody facility out in South River, like middle of nowhere, right? It's kind of like designed like a camp. Yep. And I heard about this place when I was a kid, and I remember like, man, why don't I get to go there? Like as a, you know, instead of custody, they send you there for custody.
Is it like? Have you seen the movie Holes?
Yes.
Is it like that?
Similar.
What was the camp in? Camp Green Lake. Yeah, it was Camp Green Lake in the movie Holes.
Yeah. So it's kind of similar to that. Like
idea.
We
weird.
Like we take youth on like excursions, right? So like
cool.
survival stuff, like
nice.
Like learn how to build a fire, learn how to build, you know, camp out and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like, bring all your shit with you, right? Like we're all wearing big like 100-liter packs. We're all hiking out for like 7-10 days, like winter, spring, fall, all that kind of stuff, right? Summer.
Cool. Yeah.
You know, yeah. So it was really cool, but I didn't have any of those skills. I was like a city kid, right? Like I didn't, you know, I was more urban than outdoorsy, right? So. I was like, no way, I'm not working there. Like, that's crazy, right? But then I went for the interview anyways. I'm like, if I get it, I get it. I'll go from there, right? So, of course, they're like, bring your CPIC, that kind of stuff. I'm like, great. You're going to label me.
Here we go.
You're going to label me before you even get to know me, right? As, like, this criminal. So we're talking or whatever. I'm doing the interview. And I show him this thing. He's like, no, this is great because you can call these kids out on their shit and you know what they're thinking. I'm like, exactly.
You're
the first fucking person. Yeah, exactly. Right? So he's like, no, we've done this before. You know what I mean? We'd be happy to have you. You have those skills and we'll teach you, like, the survival stuff.
Amazing.
Right? I'm like, oh, my God.
You're like, you have what we need.
Yeah.
You can learn the survival skills. You can't learn.
Yeah. But I was so scared, right? Because I didn't know that. And it was
my
first job in the field, you know, with you know, you're working with youth that were like me, and I know how difficult I was.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, oh man, like
it's a bit more intimidating.
I was, like, crying on the way home, like, man, I got to work here now, like whatever. But it was my foot in the door, right? And I worked there for a year, and it was like the best job of my life.
No kidding.
I go to work with gym shorts on and a frisbee, like, let's go, boys, right? And just get them into stuff, like get them. Like, I know what helped me change my life was that whole recreation piece, right? Like, I remember...
Yeah, you said the A in gym class and F and everything else.
Yeah, so I remember I moved to Barrie, like, when I turned my shit around and working dead-end jobs or whatever, for, you know, a few months or whatever, and then I was like, yeah, I got to get out of Dodge. So I moved to Barrie for a bit on my own. And, I stopped doing drugs and all this kind of stuff, and I had this clarity, and I was like, who am I, right? Like, I started listening to different music and all this kind of stuff, and, like... rollerblading, skateboarding, mountain biking, like I just found interests, right? And like things that I didn't get to do as a kid, because 13 to 23, I was just running around, right, and being an asshole. So I finally found like interests, right? Like I had hobbies and interests and all this kind of stuff. So it was great. So I knew like that recreation piece helped me get through, like, stay away from drugs and all this kind of stuff. I wanted to be clear. I wanted my entire brain every day. I wanted to remember yesterday. Right. So, and also, to me, it's almost like creating a version of yourself that you don't want to escape from. Right. So, like, stop doing drugs and all that kind of stuff. It's like, I no longer want to cloud myself because I like who I am.
Oh, right. Shit. So, yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. So it's different, right? It's like, it's different than just trying to like numb yourself and whatever. I don't want to be me. I don't want to live in my life. Right. Versus like, I do like who I am and I want to grow. Right, I want to grow and I want to be myself and I like who I am. So creating a version of yourself that you do love, then you don't want to cloud, you don't want to taint, you don't want to fucking die. Right. Like when I turned my shit around, and I was in Barrie. I was so scared of like my health because I'm like, I did a lot of shit, like from solvents to like a lot of drugs, a lot of drinking. Like sometimes I'd go like a day or two without eating. Right, like you were living on the streets.
While
sometimes
also
I was homeless.
Doing all that.
Yeah, while doing drugs, smoking, drinking, all this kind of stuff. So
just beating up your insides.
Poor health for like 10 years. So I'm like.
Tough.
There's no way that I can come back from this.
No.
Right? I was like, so I got to focus on like optimal living like crazy because I'm like, I'm going to go to a doctor one day. He's going to be like, sorry, remember when you were 13, 14, 15, you did all this kind of stuff? This is why you're dying or this is why you're in a bed, right?
That's terrifying.
Like, it was terrifying. So I'm like, that can't be me, man. I can't, my kids aren't going to take care of me, right? No way. Right? So optimal living, exercise, that kind of stuff. That's when I started like working out, all that kind of stuff. Like I need to, create the best version of yourself. Like why not? You only have one life, right?
Yeah. Man, so that's amazing. Is that why? And I give hats off to you because a lot of people I know have ran half marathons. A lot of people have run 10Ks and 16Ks, whatever, 30Ks. You've ran a full one. You ran a full marathon. Yeah, of course, dude. Yeah, because I ran the Ottawa one like a year or two ago. No, a year ago. Okay. Yeah, last summer. So I was like, I had a different respect for people who've done it because a half is like, you do it and it's a challenge, but something happens to your mind and your body at like kilometer 38 or 35. Yeah. Where you're like,
did you run trail or? Road?
No, I ran in Ottawa in the city.
Yeah.
So, but you ran trail.
I ran trail.
Which is crazy.
It was insane.
Yeah?
Yeah. I didn't, like, I have a friend, he's a runner, and he's like, what are you doing? Like, you're crazy, right? Yeah. Because I ran, I remember one day, I think, I was talking to someone, I was like, man, I wonder what it is, like, kilometers to run to the mall and back, from the Sudbury Mall and back. They're like, you're crazy, don't do that. Like, what are you talking about, right?
Feels like a lot of people are saying that to you about different things. Like
that
goal's a bit aggressive.
Yeah, don't underestimate me, right? So I'm like, oh, a challenge?
Start the car,
hold my beer, right?
Let's go.
Yeah, so I live beside Kiwi Park, so I'm like, what's a kilometer? So
it's the new Sudbury Mall?
Yeah. Oh my God, the hill just...
Come on, man.
Go look at the hill from Kiwi Park just to like Walmart or the bridge.
Yeah, it stresses me out.
It's insane.
Just thinking about it.
And I know because I biked it the other day, I'm like, what was I thinking? I turned around, went home. And, but yeah, so I clocked it and it's 17K there and then 17 back, right? Oh, yeah. So I'm like, if I can get there, you got to get back somehow. You don't have a car. So, and I didn't bring water or nothing. I'm like, you know what? I'll bring my debit card and my phone, throw the AirPods in, like tie the shoes on, let's go.
You don't have a car.
So it's 34K. right? It's 34K. So
yeah.
So I just got up and I laced my shoes, like no prepping. Like I've ran 10K before in the trail, but I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it, right? You're not gonna die.
No.
Right? So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy because the first 10K was like nothing because I'm like, I'm looking ahead so much that I'm like, the first 10K was nothing. I stopped at Subway, got a water and a cookie or something like that and kept going,
just kept fueling.
Yeah, and then I got to the mall and I'm like, okay, I'm at Shoppers, I'll grab another Gatorade or something in a bar or something and like keep running, right? And I ran all the way back home. And then we still had a bit of ice in the pool, so I just like dunked my legs. But the last 4K was all downhill, like from like Walmart South End to like Kiwi Park. It's all downhill, and I was like,
your legs are just,
oh my god, it hurts so much. And I was like, what was I thinking? But it's like, I got to get home. If I walk, it's going to take me another 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right? So I just got to jog it, and like my legs were on fire. Like it was so brutal. But then that was my buddy was like, that's crazy as if you did that. Like you don't even run, right? And all this kind of stuff. He was like, but if your goal is a marathon, why didn't you just run the other 8K? And I was like, fuck you.
You're like,
right?
Oh,
I couldn't.
Here we are.
Yeah. So then he told me about this, the marathon and stuff. And then even before that, my other buddy Dennis at Apex.
Yeah, shout out to
like,
Dennis. He's somewhere
on
here.
Yeah, he's like, oh, we got a 25K. That can be your good prep for your marathon.
Love it.
Yeah, let's do it. So I ran the 25K in the trail.
Yeah.
Which was crazy. But I ran that, and then I ran the marathon. And it was nuts.
Yeah.
Like, I was hugging trees like, oh, what am I doing here? Like, oh my God, like I just want to get out of the forest, but I was like, they're not going to helly me out. Like, you just got to keep running.
Yeah, just go.
Right? So
that's amazing.
I'm like, yeah, and it's like the tables have like pickles and pickle juice, and I'm like, whatever, anything.
You're like anything,
chips,
man.
And it's like nothing helped. My legs are dying,
yeah.
right? Like, it was just brutal. Like, I didn't go back in those trails for months because I was like, it was just trauma.
There's some demons in there.
Yeah. It was crazy, but it's such a good. And I podiumed. I got second place.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Congrats. Yeah.
I'm like, what? At podium? What are you talking about? It took me forever. Right?
You're like, hold on, I did well here. This is awesome. Yeah. Especially when you don't think about it too. If you're in the midst of it, you're not really thinking of result. You're just like, get me out of here.
Just get me out of here.
That was the thing. My buddy, so there's two things I want to touch on with that. Dude, my buddy and I were running, when we were running the Ottawa Marathon, and when it actually started to hurt at like kilometer 35, because we had ran the furthest in training was 30. So we, like the last 12.2 was like a little, like it's uncharted waters, right? And you're like, you don't know what's going to happen to your brain. So there's a bit of like, or like your body, and you're like, I don't know, like, can we get through this, right? It's a bit freaky, and it's intimidating for sure. Right?
Yeah.
And we're going through this, and I remember him saying, my buddy and I, we were at like kilometer 32, and we were kind of laughing because we're like, we have to keep running, because the only alternative is stop and walk back, or walk the rest of the way, which, like you said a few minutes ago, it's just going to take you 2 hours longer.
Yeah.
Like, for what, right?
Yeah.
Come on, just go. And then the thing is, too, and like I said, they're not going to lift you, they're not going to drive you in. Even if they do, by the time it takes them to get to you, the quickest way back to our car is through the finish line of the marathon.
Yeah.
So why not just do that? It was like all logic was pointing to just complete it at this point, right? So that was the first thing that I found was really funny. To walk away and not do it,
too, like you're going to hate yourself.
Hate yourself, especially that close.
It's embarrassing. Like, no, I never went there. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, you ran 37.5K, and why'd you...
Then you bitched out.
Yeah, did you collapse? It's like, no, I did what you just said. But then the thing with Dennis, shout out to him specifically too, because what Dennis taught me actually helped, like having him sit exactly where you are, was he taught me something that was very, very, like, it helped me out a lot through my own training to it, where he was like, the distance you run it, and then you have to run the second half to run back. So there's run to a distance that's like you wanted to run like to the mall. You're like, well, I have no choice but to run back.
Yeah.
And then what he said was, you go, he's like, because I'm like worried, like, what's my brain thinking, this, that, or the other thing. It's like, it's so far. And he's like, in order to not get intimidated by the distance, you have to break it down as small of a, like, make it as simple of a thing as you can, right? And the way my brain went was, I was like, it's just running. And then it's one foot in front of the other. Don't worry about 10 kilometers or how much I have left to do. Just worry about getting to the next kilometer, and then you're halfway, And you're like, oh, that's not bad. And then you realize that if you did it once, you could probably do it again. So then you double the 10 turns into 20, or 15 turns in, and then it just progresses, right? But basically, he broke it down to like just one foot in front of the other, man. Just focus on making like the right stride, the correct technique, breathe every second, every time you take a step, and then eventually you finish.
Yeah.
And you just got to do that, and then and your brain checks out anyway. Like you're just in the moment as much as you can be.
I think I remember hearing David Goggins say, "Just put one foot in front of the other."
Yeah.
I remember doing that when I was running, like just one foot in front of the other. Like you're not going to die here, right? Like
that's
you
amazing.
just got to keep going. Right.
There's a funny story I've talked about a couple times on the podcast, but I'll share with you if you haven't heard it. My buddy idolizes David, right? And I call him David for the reasons I'll tell you in a second. But he, so we did a run. It was minus 20. We ran 12 or 16 and a half, 0.6K, and like minus 20 snow. Dead of winter. We took the photo outside of my house, posted to his, with Strava, right? Because if you didn't post on Strava, did you run anywhere?
Yeah.
No, right? No. Right, so you get it. And basically, I put it on my story on Instagram and was like, David Goggins would be proud of you today. Like, because it was my buddy's idea to run the marathon, but he never ran. And like, I ran in high school. I competed in like cross country and all.
Yeah.
So it wasn't unfamiliar for me to run in these conditions or run long distance at all.
Yeah.
But to him, it was a stretch. He hadn't been running for long, a year and a half, 2 years. So it was like a big moment for him because that was like the furthest he's run in the coldest, worst conditions, blah, blah, blah. A lot of milestones for him. So it was a really good personal growth moment for him. And I posted, David Goggins would be proud of you today, brother. And David responds and he writes, stay hard. And I was like,
oh, sick.
I showed it to him. I was like, dude, look at this. And he's like, I'm going to frame it and give it to him as a wedding present because he just got engaged.
Oh, nice.
So like literally a week ago. So I'm going to share it. I'm going to print it, frame it, and be like, this is your, a wedding gift, And then a bunch of cash. But that's a obvious one. But man, that's so I figured you get a kick out of that when you said it. I was like, oh, I like this. Yeah. So there's something about looking back on everything that you've kind of gone through, and it seems to me that you've had that, like, I want to almost talk about the importance of being, because it sounds like you want to be that one, like you're becoming that one person in these kids' lives or people's lives that will make that impact. So, because you had, in every stage of what you had went through, it sounds like chunks of your time, whether it be like as a kid, then jail, and then trying to reform your life to reform your life to getting through the pardons and dealing with everything there. It sounds like there's one or two people, or like on a job site, that kind of where the gentleman was like, you're like, how do you have this nice stuff? And you're like, oh, I'm actually in school as well, I'm doing this, that, and the other thing. It sounds like there was one person in each of these like sections of blocks of time in your life that were able to give you that little like nugget of like, here you go, bit of wisdom for you. And then you're like, oh shit, and it like completely changed the course of your thinking. And it sounds like that's your objective, to be that for kids that can't have it, instead of just another voice saying, you have a criminal record.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it's about being that example also for them, right? To be like
leading.
Yeah, because especially like, so I work in social work now, right?
Yes.
And it's like, a lot of kids are like, oh, you're just a bookworm. You just went to school and now you have this job and you think you're gonna, tell me how it is. You don't know how it is, right? That kind of stuff. And it's like, well, here's an example, right? So I'm the example of like, you're going through all these barriers and then you think you can't do it, but I went through all the same barriers that you're trying to go through now, right? Like school, not getting a job because of criminal record, not, all this kind of stuff, and trying to change your behaviors, right? Trying to change the person that you are. Right. Right. So I want to be like that example that it's like, you can do it, right? Because I did it. Right. And if I can do it, you can do it. Right. So, I think just being that example is like the most important piece, right? That it's like they know that someone else, hit rock bottom and came out of it, right? That's what I loved about like working addictions, right? When I worked in addictions, it was like all these guys are like, how'd you do it, man? They're like, oh, I have a criminal record, so I can't get a job. And I'm like, well, I'm still sitting here with a criminal record and I have this job. Yeah. Right? So I love it, yeah. You just got to like, you got to do good shit for a while and people will see that, right? Like, be a different person than who you were then.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Like you committed armed robbery yesterday. Yeah, sure, you're probably not going to get a job.
Yeah.
Right, but it's like, you might get a job somewhere else, right? A labor job or something, right? Like I remember trying to get jobs, and I would like show up on the job site or whatever, steel toes, hard hat, lunch in a backpack, and it's like, I'll work for you for free, man. Just like I'll show you what I can do, and then you tell me what I should get paid.
I just need to be doing something
different.
different.
I need to be on here, right? And that's how I got jobs. Half the time, it's like I'll work for you for free, right? And I'll just like
I'll just earn.
Yeah, you just work your ass off, and you show them who you can be, right? And they'll decide if they want to hire you or not. And 9 times out of 10, they do, right?
Amazing.
Yeah, so I tell the kids that I work with the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's like you have to excel, right? Like, it depends what your goals are, right? But you have to work on them. Like I was talking about the book, right? It's like you have to work on the things that you want to work on. It's just like the steps you got to take, right? Like a lot of people get overwhelmed. They're like, oh my God, I got to get to here, or even my degree, right? All the time I was like, I would get my courses and I would get like all these assignments I have to do. And I was like, there's no way I can do this. Like, oh my God, right? History and like reading like old Plato stuff, Socrates, like everything, like how
all
am I
these
do this?
philosophers,
like, there's no way, right? I can do this, but it's like, one course at a time, one essay at a time, read one book at a time, right? And just get through it. Like make it like micro goals, and it turns out into a degree, or it turns out into a career, or it turns out into whatever it is. But the more time and effort you put towards something, the sooner you're going to get it, right? Like you can walk towards it or you can run towards it. Depends how bad you want it.
Amazing.
Right? So for me, it's always like excelling. It's always growth. It's always, that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of people will say like you're too hard on yourself, right? Because I'm never there.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm never. Like I remember I pulled up to me and a couple of people pulled up to where I work now, right? And we actually have this. So I work in the child welfare sector. And I moved up a lot in different jobs, and I finally so now I'm a supervisor.
Nice.
Right? And
congrats.
I run a team and all that kind of stuff.
Sick.
I have to hire people and like do interviews, and it's so crazy to be on that other side, right?
Yeah,
and it's wild.
That's crazy.
And I pull up to this place because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna work, in building C or this other building. They're like, no, you're running the new program. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, oh, there's the old youth jail on Bancroft. It used to be a youth jail, and then our organization got it donated from the ministry, and we're running a youth outreach program.
Oh, wow, nice.
A youth transitional home from
Amazing.
there, right? So like we need you to develop the program, write the manual, do all the stuff, hire the staff. Like, what do you need? All this kind of stuff. And I was like, the old youth jail, right? And I pull up. This is the first youth jail I went into when I was a kid.
Come on.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So I walk in there and I'm like, oh my God, trauma.
Talk
right?
about a full circle moment.
Yeah, it was crazy. And they're like, oh my God, you made it and this and that, you made it. And I'm like, I didn't make it yet. I just got the job. Like, congratulate me in 3 years from now after I ran the program for a while. Right? Like, I'm always hard on myself in that sense, but I'm always trying to progress, right? But it was crazy to be, like, I walk in the place and I'm like, oh my God, I used to freak out here. I used to, I got dropped off here by the cops so many times. I'm like, do I really want to work here? Like, my office is here now? And I'm like, oh man, this is so triggering. But at the same time, it's that full circle moment. Like, I'm the guy for this. I'm the right guy for it.
100%.
I used to be here.
No better person.
Right?
Literally, I was in these shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's sick.
So I'm like, you know what? I can transform this into a great piece, right? And teach these staff and all this kind of stuff, the things that I went through. And I tell all my staff my story and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, you guys are on board with the same, I'm in this from the heart, right? Like, this isn't just a job for me, right? Like, I want to succeed in a good, powerful, positive way. Running like a program and all that kind of stuff, and having staff under me. And, I'm a boss, which is like sounds weird every time I say it, but it's like
you're like, I failed grade 3, and I didn't know what an essay was when I was in university starting out, and now I have to plan a whole development program.
Yeah, a whole department, like, create a program.
Yeah, I'm hiring staff. That's
like
crazy,
I'm doing interviews and stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's crazy.
Oh man, congrats though. Like, in general, just for all that growth. Like, that's absolutely insane.
It's great.
Yeah,
it's great.
That's so powerful, man.
It's cool because being in this field, you run into certain people in this field, right? And I used to be in this field, but like on the other side, right? So
ridiculous.
So I remember the first time that occurred was like these surreal moments, right? And I write this in my book, the these like few surreal moments that I had, and it's the first one was I was working with another youth that recently turned 18, and he got charged, and he went to the Sudbury jail.
Oh,
and with
adult
youth,
jail,
like,
for the
yeah,
first time.
adult
Oh,
jail,
man.
yeah. So I'm like, oh shit, right? And they're like, you gotta go see him, right? And I'm like, okay. So now I'm going to the adult jail as a visitor, but as a professional visitor, so it's different. You're not going through the other side where you're like
That's crazy.
glass and a phone where my dad used to visit me, right? It's like you're on the other side, you're a professional, right? Like I slide in my ID, I sign the form, they let me in, I got pens and my phone in my pocket, all this kind of
You're like,
stuff, and I'm on the other side. Like,
this is different.
you know what I mean? Cling, they're gonna let you in to see your, you know, the person you want to visit, right? I'm like a professional walking through these doors, right? It was so crazy, it was so surreal. And then it's like I walk through these doors, and then the door locks behind me, and chills just ran through my entire body. I'm like, oh fuck, I am now locked in a jail.
That stale air.
Right? Like it was just like it hit. Like I had to like I was having a panic attack. Like I'm like, oh my god, right? Like let me out. Kind of thing at first, but then I'm like, chill out. Like you're on the right side. Like you know what I mean? Like it was really hard to like reel myself back in and be like, you're here for this kid, just wait for him, right? And he was taking forever to get down there. And then he comes down, he's wearing the orange pumpkin suit, he's sitting across from me, and like it was so like such a surreal moment that I'm like, I used to be exactly what you're saying.
I've held that phone, I've had this discussion.
And now I'm like, there's no, like it was a table just like this, like a bit of a plexiglass, but it's like I was able to give the kid a hug and do whatever, right? Like professional visit is different.
Right?
No
so
kidding. It's like so weird to be like trusted. Like if these guards only knew who I was, you know?
It'd be.
And they're letting me in, and
you'd be on the
all
other
this
side.
kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's man. That's so cool. That's a
it
cool
was
moment.
A really surreal moment.
Yeah,
right?
no kidding. There is something I'm curious about when I hear people talk about this, and I think you'd be a great person to answer this because I've only asked this question one other time to a buddy of mine who was on the podcast, and while he was like had an ankle bracelet on, it's like while he was on parole and whatever, and so that was a trip. But he ended up. My question was, I'm gonna ask you, how long do you think? Because there are people that's like, oh, okay, this person's a criminal. How long do you think that label should stick? Like, what's the statute of limitations on you identifying somebody as a criminal? Because like you commit a crime, that's, it's kind of what you are. But you're saying there's 15 years of nothing and 15 years I've pardoned. Like it's all this stuff I've gone through to like reform myself and make the adjustments. But people might be, oh well, once a criminal, always a criminal. Like, what is that statute of limitations? You think that before, like, hey, you've earned to not be referred to as this person. It's a different version.
I think it's not a limit of time. I think it's what you're doing with your life.
Oh,
like, you
interesting.
can like have a job and drive cab and do whatever and be like, yeah, I've changed, and it's like no, like how are your behaviors? How do you treat people?
Interesting.
Right? Like,
what's your lifestyle like now?
What's your lifestyle like now? What do you do for coping strategies instead? Right? Like, what do you like? I would talk to the guys at the addictions program. It's like you truly know that you're good, like in your recovery or whatever. If like shit hits the fan, like what are you gonna do now, right? Like I want you guys to be here in this program still with me, and like shit to hit the fan in your life, and you still don't go to drugs, right? Like what's your new habit loop, right? Because your habit loop, like for me, you know what I mean. You tell me off, like I'm pushing you, I'm punching you, I'm doing whatever, right? That's what I know. But my new habit loop now is like I walk away because I'm, so the more you do the positive habits, the more they stick, right? Next time that happens, I know to walk away, right? So when something crazy happens in your life and someone dies or your ex breaks up with you or whatever,
some traumatic,
something traumatic happens in your life. Do you turn to drugs? Do you turn to the negative, or do you flip it to a positive, right? And like, because a negative, using a negative to heal a negative is not going to work, right? It's just you still end up at zero, right? So you got to do something positive with your life. Right, so just like me, right, like doing drugs and doing all this kind of stuff to try and heal the pain doesn't do anything. It just pushes it aside until you're sober, and then once you are sober, then all these emotions and all this kind of stuff, right? So back to your question, it's about who you are as a person, and like, did you learn from that? Did you draw your line in the sand, and are you a different person from that now?
Right.
Like, what do you do with your time? What do you do with your day? Because you are what you repeatedly do.
Yeah, I love that. I love that quote so much. Yeah. Man,
so your daily habits and your daily, shit is who you are, right? So you're not a runner if you don't run, right? So you're like, if you still keep committing crimes, or you're still an asshole, you're still treating people like crap, or still doing those bad habits and those bad things, then you're not going to be able to relabel yourself,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, I think I've done so much more on this side of the tracks than I have on the other now, that I can honestly say, like,
it cancels
people
out.
in the community and everybody, like, see me like as a good example to people, versus
100%.
Crossing the street when I come.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah. So I think it's about what you do with your life, moving forward.
Such a great answer.
It could be weeks or months or whatever, versus, it's not about the time. Right?
But if something happens to you and it forces that tailspin, what does that look like? Like, what's your reaction to things?
Yeah. What are you going to do when someone's in your face, or something bad happens to you?
When you're pushed to that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, same with, like, it's hard for people like me or anybody that's been in the justice system for a long time to, like, I don't know, you have a real problem with authority, right? So, like, trying to get a job and then you have a boss telling you what to do, or, like,
they get in your face about something,
right? Yeah, it's hard, right? And they're assholes, or they judge you, or they label you or something, to be like, just brush it off, right? And be that different person.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a skill in itself, right? Like, you have to change your behavior, right? You have to change.
It takes a lot.
Yeah, like, I've learned throughout my life now, which is why, like, I love that I didn't write a book before, and I'm trying to do it now, because I've learned that, like, no negativity is positive, right? Like, everything you do that's hateful or hurtful, or, like, even holding a grudge, or, like, I used to, I'd be driving sometimes, like, white knuckling, just thinking about, things in my past, all this kind of stuff, and it's like, you're just robbing yourself of your positive time that you could be doing something with your life, right? So, and negativity can't live in positivity, right? So you just gotta keep doing good, positive things, and be kind to everyone, right? It's not going to benefit you to be hurtful or vengeful or hold grudges against, like I had a hard time. I remember I was listening to a Christian radio station for some reason. They used to play some hip hop stuff when I turned my life around, and I didn't want to listen to, like, all the hip hop stuff, because, like, Biggie Smalls, like, smoke blunts and do all this kind of stuff. Like, I couldn't relate anymore, right? Like, I can listen. Yeah, I can listen to it now, right? And, love the beats, and I love the old school Nas and Biggie and all that kind of stuff. But back then, when I'm trying to turn my life around and keep hearing, like, Eminem and all this stuff or whatever, I'm like, oh, it just makes me want to go do drugs and do bad things, right? Whatever. So I remember listening to the Christian radio station, and the guy on there was like, in order to be forgiven, or think that people can forgive you, you got to forgive those who did wrong against you. And I think back of the guys that bullied me, I was like, no fucking way, like, I'm not doing that, right? No. Like, so forget that. Like, people aren't going to forgive me, or I can't ask for forgiveness, or feel like, like that, if I can't forgive other people. And then it's like, I had to go back to, like, what, something went wrong in your life, or, you went through something, that affected your mental health, that makes you want to bully other people, right? Like, you see it all the time in movies and all this kind of stuff. Like, why is this kid picking on this other kid? It's like, well, his brother's picking on him, or his life is shit, or he's got trauma, that kind of stuff, right? So, not to hold the blame on people that hurt you, right? And let that go, right? Like, we all have those people, like, oh man, I wish I would have, cracked him one, or, whatever. But it's like, realistically, it's like, I love that I can let all that go. Like, even things that happen now in my life, or people cut me off or whatever, it's like, it's honestly not worth it, right? I'd rather stay in the positive, right? Sometimes it takes you a while to
it sounds really tough.
It does sound tough, but it's such a good characteristic to have, because then nothing can hurt you.
Amazing. What type of habits do you have to add to your daily routine in order to make that, like, a reality? Like, it's just more doing, like, just healthy stuff.
Yeah, I think just like positive mindset, right? Like, again, I'm pretty hard on myself in that sense. Like, if I didn't do much positive stuff all day, then I'm like, wow, did I work on my goals? Like, that whole self-assessment piece. I've seen, like, I'll do that at night. I'll be like, what did I do today? And it's like, oh man, like, I wasted all this time. Like, I watched Netflix, or I did that, or I went for a run where I should have done this, or whatever. Like, maybe too much exercise versus I could have done more stuff that's productive towards my
book
goals.
Writing,
like, work towards your goals, and then get there sooner. So what do you want in your life, right? So like, I read a lot of books, like, about, like, personal growth and all that kind of stuff, because it's totally my avenue, right, that I love. And I think that bleeds into like when I worked in addictions and stuff, it doesn't have to do it with anything about addictions. It can just be like personal growth, self-assessment, that kind of stuff, just trying to be the best version of yourself and creating a person that you love. Then you're not going to want to do drugs, you're not going to want to hurt the people around you, you don't want to stay in a positive mindset, right? So reading all those books and trying to like time block my time, or just trying to have that balance, right? But it's tough, like you have that balance and then you're like, okay, well, I gotta, I used to teach wellness, right? So like when I worked in addictions, I would teach like the wellness wheel and like that whole balance piece, like social aspect, intellectual, your work, all that kind of stuff, physical, and how they all affect each other, right? It's great to have that balance, right? But at the same time, we used to do this activity where we kind of color in like our strengths and weaknesses, right? We ask these certain questions and you see on the wheel like where you lack, right? Like, oh man, I do nothing social, or like my sleep is shit, my diet is shit, and whatever. And it's like, how do you think that's going to affect your job or your intellectual or your emotional state, right? So, and same thing if you have emotional stuff going on, like it's weighting on your shoulders, you're not doing everything else right either, right? So it all kind of bleeds into each other. But at the same time, if you have a strength, you can kind of take from that strength and kind of like dial back. Like for me, it's like, sure, I can hit the gym 3, 4, 5 times a week, but it's like, am I working on the other stuff, right? So I can take from that a bit and be like, hey, let's do twice a week and put this time and energy towards something else. Like everyone has 24 hours in a day. Right. It's like a battery, right? So it's like, where are you going to use it up? Where are you going to use your time, right? Efficiently.
Interesting. Yeah, it's how you prioritize that and take what you need to do here and then apply it based on kind of what your goals are for the next couple months. Yeah. Like what your medium to short term goals are.
Yeah, and still feel good about yourself. Yeah. Like know that you're doing the right thing, but you're still like enjoying life. Right. Like nobody wants to like, I don't know, I know a lot of the old generation, like they live to retire and when I retire I'll do this, when I retire I'll do that. And it's like, started. No way, man. No way, you can't do that because you could die tomorrow. Yeah. And it's like, what did you do? Right?
A lot of, it's funny you mention that because there's a lot of people I've been talking to where I'm sharing what my girlfriend and I are doing or what we want to do and like, oh, we want to move here, live there, go experience this, and it's a bit different than what we're doing now, but everybody's saying, well, if you leave Canada, your retirement pension plan stops until you come back. So then all those years in between, so say we move to like New Zealand, Japan, somewhere like Portugal, year, that's 3 years now that's out. They're like, oh, set up for your retirement. And like you said, it's like you've seen a bunch of people like pass away before that time. Yeah. Half the time even, right? Yeah. So there's no, with all these external things like with wars and then with all these other issues that are going on that we don't know how much time we have, I'm like, to your point, why not just try to enjoy it as best you can? Do things you enjoy, connect with people, try to grow as best as you can, implement the good habits, and then try to make as much of an impact as you can throughout all that.
The last thing you want to do is die with regrets. Yeah. To me, right? That's my biggest thing is like, I don't want to die tomorrow and know that I didn't, write the book or I didn't do this or that or didn't get to experience those things or travel, that kind of stuff. And it's like, set a plan, do it now. Have different accounts for different things or, do that kind of stuff because you never know, right?
No, you don't.
Yeah, because I think I wasted enough. Like I wasted 10 years of my life doing whatever.
That's how you look at it.
Yeah, so I'm like, I don't want to waste any more time. Right?
Would you say
more time to waste?
No, you're right. What 10 years would you say was a waste from this time to this time? Like which?
Like 13 to 23.
13 to 23 was the big 10.
Yeah.
Jeez. And those are like pinnacle years.
They're pivotal, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And so many people go through that, right? Wow. Like I work with so many youth, and it's like they're 18, 19, 20, or 16, 17, it's like, just be a kid, man. Like, just go play.
Yeah, have some fun, go outside. Play.
So I started, like, when I was 23, it's like I'm, mountain biking, trying to get on a soccer team, doing all that kind of stuff, because I didn't get to do that when I was a kid, right? So it's like, I'm still, like, anybody that knows me, like, I'm playful, like, go to the park with a kid or something like that, it's like everybody's playing tag, all that kind of stuff. Like, let's go.
You'll also do that.
Yeah, exactly. Parents are like, oh, I wish I was your age, and it's like, I'm pretty sure I'm twice your age. Yeah. Right? Like, but
especially in experience. Yeah. You're like, my organs are probably triple your age.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Oh, but man. Live, like, be a kid, right? Like, even adults, amazing, right? It's like we learn, like, we lose the fun because we, like, jump into, like, responsibilities and all this kind of shit. And it's like we put all that out the door, right? But it's like, Like, be a kid as long as you can. Have fun with life.
And you think that keeps you more youthful and healthier, I think, as well, right? Because you have to sustain those.
Well, people are so scared to, like, oh, I got to go to the gym and blah, blah. And if you hate it, then it's like, do something else.
Yeah, don't.
Right? Like,
you can
ride a mountain bike.
Play
like,
sports, ride a mountain bike.
Like, do anything that's, like, fun, and it'll be active. And, like, you be training, you don't even know it.
100%.
Like, I go play soccer, I'm dead.
Yeah.
Right? That's hardcore cardio.
But you're having a blast.
You're having a blast. You don't even notice.
But if I said, hey, dude, let's do 60 wind sprints, you'd be like, no. But realistically, you're doing like 400 on soccer pitch.
Yeah.
Man, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite piece of advice is always what you just said when it comes to retirement. You're like, people are living for like 40 years from now. But that's because, like you were saying earlier, that's how the generation is.
Yeah, and that's the shit I want to do is like,
separating from it.
I won't want to do when I'm 60 or 70.
No, God, no.
Like, I won't be able to, like, ride a one wheel or like do these kind of random things, right? Like
fun things that I want to try.
Yeah. I'm not gonna go base jumping at 70. Well, you might.
You might,
but
I would bet you would attempt it if you're 70.
Yeah, probably.
Like, that seems like.
I think that's why I love training, because it's like I want my body to like be able to play soccer, do fun things, like do all
longevity.
That kind of stuff. Like even my daughter, I was playing soccer with my daughter, and she's like, I hope to be fit like you when I'm your age, right? So I'm like, yeah, that's great that I can be an example for you.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm like, that's amazing that you're able to.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, before we kind of close, talk to me about, and I've dropped hints about it, but I'm curious, talk to me about kind of the vision for Reformed Delinquent and what that is. Because that's, and I remember this, and I'll never forget it now, because I've forgotten it in the past. And I still beat myself up every day about it. At least once it comes into my head. And I think you know what I'm talking about, maybe. But when I introduced you at 5 Cent City to read your poem, and I remember knowing that it was Reformed Delinquent, but I thought it wasn't. And so I paused, and like I was like stuttering to get it out and trying to catch myself. I was like, maybe if I just say it, it'll like like insert. But I blanked, and I was like, no, I know it's Reformed. And then thankfully Ricky was like,
Ricky did pipe in,
and I was like, shit. And I was like, I found you after. I was like, man,
because he MC'd last year.
Yeah, they threw me in on like an hour's notice.
Yeah,
they're like, hey, so this event thing you're about to do, Glenn, can you go speak to a lady from CTV? I was like, I guess so. Yeah, so it was like a lot of like on the spot, like, hey, do this, hey, do this, hey, do this. Hey, so I need you to introduce everybody that's not playing or that's not rapping. I'm like, it's a lot of speakers.
Yeah.
Christian, that's like 6 hours. It's like, okay. So can you do that? Yeah.
Wow.
I was like, I'll figure it out later.
Yeah, exactly. So, say yes to things, right?
Say yes, figure it out later.
Yeah, for sure. I remember I had a guy reach out to me, like this was a few years back now, and it's like, I think I'm always in that mindset of like, just say yes to things, then you have to do it, right?
Yeah, you'll figure out later.
He's a professor. He was a professor at U of T, Adam, and he reached out to me. He's like, would you like to speak at my sociology class at U of T?
Amazing.
And I was like, fuck no, that's crazy. I'm not speaking at U of T. I've never, like, I spoke once at 5 Cent City, reading it off a paper, right? I'm not ready, right? And I'm like, yes. Right, and I'm like, now I gotta.
You're like, damn
right? And I'm like, shit, I said yes to it.
No, I don't want to do it. I can't do that. Yeah, I'll do it.
Force yourself into uncomfortable situations, right? And that's how you grow. You don't grow in the comfort zone. So I'm like, let's just go, right? So I just prepped, and I went to U of T and I spoke, and I actually got one of my friends, Lee Solo, and he's a videographer. And
amazing.
Great.
Yeah.
And he's out in Toronto, so I was like, hey man, you know what I mean? Why don't you come out and like video it, so then I have it, right? Because it's a big moment, right? Like I'm speaking at U of T. Let's go. So I went, I did it, and it went great.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
It's like one of the things now I have like under my belt. I put it on the website, that kind of stuff. But it was like saying yes to those things like last minute or whatever, like just do it, right? And it's like you'll figure it out, and you did, right?
Yeah.
You did it great.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
There's what I do have this actually as a question I was really curious about before you talk a bit more about before you kind of share about Reformed Delinquent.
Yeah.
What do you what was your favorite? You've done a few speeches now, like whether it be or talks or whatever in front of crowds or schools or different like events, right? But what was your favorite one you've done? Like I know there's the 5 Cent City, there's the poem, there's the actual first one you did, there's like the one, the couple you've done in universities and stuff like that.
Yeah, I want to say the poem is the best thing that I've done. That was like, I was ready. Like I was so ready, and I think that's the difference. Like I've spoken like to organizations before, like from work, so they're like, oh, you can speak, like why don't you speak? And I'm like, oh shit, right? And I remember bombing one once, and then I was like, I know why I bombed, because I wasn't ready. Like I didn't know the material, right? So I knew like the poem. I was like, I'm not even nervous, man. Like, let's go. Because, like, I was sure I was nervous when you called my name because I'm like, oh my God, shit, it's happening. But it's like, there was a lot of people there too,
man.
right?
That was a lot.
But I was like, you know what? As soon as I spit out those next few words, like, I know it. Like, I know it, right?
Super,
like,
you're really
like
prepared.
crazy. So I think the better prepared you are for something, the more, like, it's just going to flow, right? Like, and, you know, so yeah, that's my favorite, right? I didn't read it off a piece of paper. I memorized it. It's my story, right? It's my story in a poem. And it's great. And Christian just like, the way he just grabbed me after, he's like, you killed it.
Yeah.
It was just, fuck, it was so great. And
Hugged
Mike was going off like, oh my God. Like, it's just, I'll rewatch the video and people went nuts after. And I was like, this is great for it to be received. And all these people coming up to me just like, this is awesome, right? So it was great. I think it was my biggest crowd and it was my best.
There was at least 100 people there.
Yeah.
Like at that time, I think.
Yeah.
Is when it was most.
Yeah. A lot of people came up to me after, like, yeah, that hit home. That got me emotional, all this kind of stuff. My dad, oh my God. My dad, it was the first time he heard the poem. Like, I told him I was doing a poem, but I was like, I don't want you to hear it until, you know, whatever. He's like, I'm coming out, right? And, like, the first 2 seconds, he's like, right? Like,
come on.
Yeah. Like, it was just like.
That's huge.
Yeah, so he came to me after, he holding me, man, like, it was just crazy, right? And he's there, like, he was there at 5 Cent City a couple years before when I read my thing, and he's like, man, the world needs to hear your story.
100%.
And I was like, yeah, man, for sure. So getting, like, letting him be there, like, you know, he was camping or something, he showed up, and he's like, yeah, I want to be there, and he was there, and he's one of my biggest supporters, man. He rocks the brand, he wears the t-shirts.
That's awesome.
Like, just loving it, right? Like, he loves it. So I love that I can make him proud like that, right? So, yeah, definitely the poem was pinnacle for me so far. I love that. Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of dive in now? What, why the brand, why Reformed Delinquent, how did that kind of shape, and then also what's like the vision for it? Like, what's that trajectory look like?
Yeah, I think it started off as like the clothing brand because I didn't know how else to launch it, right?
Right,
I was
makes
like,
sense.
hey, like I wanted to do a blog, which I put a bunch of blogs on the website. Like at first I created 2 websites. One was the blog, one was like a store for clothing and stuff. But then I was like, you know, that's too hard to like do both, and I had 2 Instagrams. I'm like, I'm just gonna merge it all into one space, which is great. I stopped blogging just because like I ran out of like time and energy kind of thing, right? So I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to put it in the book, that kind of stuff. I want to start putting pieces in the blog, which would be good, and I might start doing that. I did the clothes for a while, and that was great. Again, just time and energy, and I started that new career. So I was like, you know what, I just didn't have the time and energy to go like, drop off shirts or send shirts, and you know, clothing brand doesn't really make a lot of money either. It wasn't really about the money, it was just getting my message out there, right? So along with the shirts, like other people were like hearing about the brand and like now having that themselves as well. Like, you know, I had one guy like, you know, post about the shirt and he's like, wow, this is like my favorite shirt, I love it, I've been sober 28 days, that kind of stuff. Like just really cool shit. Like it hit home for a lot of people, right? Like my story is similar to a lot of other people's stories, right? So to know like there's a community out there of other people like me that, you know, wanted to turn the life around, or, you know, they'll come up to me like, or they'll message me and be like, you know, I was struggling with opiates, or I was doing this and now I have my kids back, or, you know, all this kind of stuff. It's like, wow, man, like I hit people's lives just with this clothing.
Oh, for sure.
Right? And like putting it on people and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely want to keep doing that. You know, I kind of paused like the clothing and all that kind of stuff. I feel like I kind of went backwards, right? Like did the merch first.
Right.
So, so I now know that I'm like, okay, I'll put the merch on the back burner, and I'll, you know, the book is the biggest thing for me right now. You know, I've been talking about this book for probably, you know, 15, 20 years kind of thing. So I'm like, you know, it's about time that I just write it.
For sure.
And so I keep saying like, yeah, in 4 months I'll get it done. 4 months I'll get it done. That was probably 4 months ago. Yeah. Right. So, so definitely by next year I want to have it out. Amazing, right. Like I just want to just like set a goal and just get it out. Right. That kind of stuff. So that'd be great. And I want to keep speaking. Right. So that's why I joined Toastmasters. I've been there at least 6 months. And that's been great, helping me, you know, speak and, you know, do better in that craft, like perfect that craft.
For sure.
Right. So that's been great. I want to speak. I want to build a course. I want to just grow the whole website to be like, here's the book, here's a course you can take online, you can, do one-on-one with me, that kind of stuff, like be it like a life coach or like people that are trying to go through the similar stuff that I went through, right? Like I want to write the blueprint and just like, this is how I did it, this is how you can do it too. I can help you through the whole part of the process.
Yeah.
And, school and that whole avenue or whatever, right? Like you feeling like you can't do it, I want to give you that hope that you can, because I did it too, right? And I went through all those struggles, and yes, it gets worse before it gets better, but you have that goal, that outcome, right? Like there's no point. Like I remember doing my degree, it was like at 2 years or at 3 years, like, oh, I just want to quit. But it's like, what do you do with like half a degree, right? Can you even put that on your resume? I did half a degree.
Right.
Like it's not like you just got to go all in, right? And invest in yourself, right? Your time, your energy, and just have those goals, right? So I hope to be able to do that with other people. Like I want to speak in schools, I want to speak in organizations, right? Like probation or parole or anything like that. I have a different lens, right? Because I have the lived experience in it. I worked in addictions. I worked with youth in custody. I worked, the child welfare system now. So I have like all these different lenses from different aspects of, people's lives that, struggle through trauma or anything like that. So,
So, Jimmy, do you have anything that you want to, whether it be story, lesson, experience, we've kind of touched on a lot, and I want to know, do you have anything you want to say to kind of conclude the episode, finish, really put the nail on the coffin for what we've talked about today? Kind of round out the whole episode that you can think of.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it just comes back to always like, I think for other people too that think that they can't do it, or I don't know. I remember running into an old friend, and he's like, "Oh man, how'd you do it? This and that, and all this kind of stuff." He's like, "Yeah, but you were smarter than us, and you did that, and different." It's like I wasn't smarter. I just university made me smarter. College made me smarter. Like you gotta learn and grow, right? Like you gotta read those books, and you gotta do those things like personal growth wise if you want to grow. Right. So I think for me, it's like a lot of people think they can't do stuff, or their time is gone. Like, oh no, I can't do that anymore. I'm stuck in this career, or I'm stuck in this job, or whatever the case is, or I have a criminal record and I can't do anything with it, or. But you can, right? You can get a pardon. Even without a pardon, you can still have good jobs. I think entrepreneurship's a great way to go, because you don't need, you don't need your pardon. You don't need to show your CPIC to anybody, right? You don't need to answer to nobody, right? You just do your own thing, right? And just be passionate about whatever you're doing, right? And just grow in a positive way, right? I think for me, I constantly want to be that hope for people, right? That you can do it no matter what. Like I was, I grade 6 education, went to university, right? Like, I totally hit rock bottom, and I still climbed out of the hole. Right? Like the deeper you dig your hole, the harder it's going to be to come out. But what's the alternative? Sure. You're just going to lay down and die, right?
Really,
so
that's the alternative.
And
for sure.
Like not just lay down and die, but just like do go through life not doing what you truly want to do. Yeah. Right.
A bit more passive.
Yeah. You're just like you just put up with it, or you just you just go through life not loving life. Yeah. Right. Like there's so much. Like I was the kid that didn't want to live. Right. Like I didn't want to live past 20. I didn't want to live this life. I didn't want to be here. Right. I still have that struggle sometimes where I'm like, oh man, like I get super overwhelmed with life, and I'm like, what's the chances that I can be, part of that 1% or 5% that can like create a course, write a book, do the speaking, and do all this kind of stuff, and live off it, and truly excel in that way. It sounds so hard and difficult, and the outcome is like extreme, but it's like I have to do it, otherwise like I feel like life isn't worth living. Like I have a hard time with that. Right. I'm like, oh, why go through it then if you're not going to live your dream, right? So I'm sure there's other people like me like that just struggle with being here and living this life, and like finding zest for life, or like depression and anxiety, all that kind of stuff, right? And just not wanting to live life or feel like hopeless, right? And it's like, well, then you got to find passion, you got to find purpose, right? And even if purpose for you is becoming the best version of yourself and being able to be example for the people around you, right? Like it's really hard to for people around you to still be, I guess, glum or you know, I don't know, just I think being a good example to just everyone around you is purpose in itself.
Oh,
right?
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, like it's just like, so my goal is like, you know, if I can help change your life in a positive way, and then you go, you know, your life excels, and then other people see that and they want to change their lives, and like, you know, that growth just happens, right? I remember as a kid, I was like, you know, I had this big fear that, you know, like the more bad people there are in this world, the more it's like, almost like if you colored the world in red and green, right? And red was bad and green was good. And it's like the more bad people are, the worse the world gets. But it's like if we can be good examples to people and help change people's lives and have those like karmas real, right?
Oh, for sure.
It's like the more good things you can do in the world, and you know, other people see that, and then it changes their life, and then they change other people's lives. Like we can grow in a positive way and change people's lives in a positive way, and that grows, right?
Amazing. Yeah, it ripples.
Yeah, it's that ripple effect, right? Like you can be a good example, like a positive influence in people's lives, or you can be a negative.
100%.
And like that's day to day.
And it's your choice.
Yeah, it's your choice totally.
Amazing.
Right.
I have the utmost, like, beyond a shadow of, like, I have no doubts in my mind that you will achieve that. Like, that example, that leading by example, that 1% that you're talking about having the courses, being able to make that impact and influence others. I've always been very impressed with your, like, you speak very well, and like your communication, you speak very well, you articulate very well, and you're an incredible storyteller. So I really appreciate you being able to share your story with me today and the audience today. I'm very, very happy you were able to sit down across from me. I wish you would have done it sooner. I wish we could do it. I know we'll do it again, especially when the book comes out. So I'm very excited about that for sure. For sure. I cannot wait for that. I'm very excited, especially after hearing how much you shared today. I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. Yeah. I'm very fired up to hear the stories. Yeah, man, I'm grateful you're able to come on the podcast. Where can people find you, reach out, or connect with you?
Yeah, I guess Instagram, or reformdelinquent.com is the website. Yeah. If you want to check it out. And yeah, I'm on Instagram, reformdelinquent.
Easy enough. Yeah. Right on, brother, man. Yeah. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Man. Right on. Thank you. That's it.
Awesome.